We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have an interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all of these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. WVAI 101 Jams. Your home for hip hop and classics. This is how we do. Sir Charles, Miss Max.
Yeah.
Another Sunday. Now, I'm just overly excited. I'm all jittery over here. I gotta make sure I push the right buttons. You know what I'm talking about, Razor?
I certainly do. I certainly do.
Hey, look, for those that don't know, I wanted to bring y'all into some silence and some make sure you're listening and be like, oh, what did he say? What are you doing? What are you doing? Because we got none other than Maxilia Robinson live in studio because y'all probably know that that when COVID had a lot of things changed, including for the station. So Miss Max has been virtual and it sort of we started doing things a little bit differently. But now we're gonna bring you the new IMHO. We got the queen in hand. Sir Charles. Razor's still up to his shenanigans as always. So we ain't got too much new else going for you. But we're gonna give you the show like we always do. We're gonna entertain for you good people. And so, Max, we got a great show coming up. You see the music bed in the background, so we're going to get the business now. Right. So, can y'all hear?
I need some sound.
Oh, is that louder?
Need sound.
Uh-oh.
Now, sounds like a short. Okay, you good?
You good now? Okay, hopefully that short doesn't go out. So, yes, indeed. We're going to be joined by UOC's Mary Grace. Now, she is helping Sudanese orphans, right, that may be in war-torn areas, getting them schools and education. Now, not only is she talking about the fundraising for that, but she's also maybe a familiar name for those who may say, Mary Grace. I've heard that name before. So, Max, she joined us after August 12th, 2017. She was one of the medics on site, giving care to people right there on site when some of the tragedies happened. So she was on for that. So, we definitely applauded her for that. And she continues her great community service. She's definitely a servant of the people. And so she's going to be on. You got to stay tuned for that. All your favorite segments. But middle of the show, we're going to be joined by the incumbent Senator Creigh Deeds. So Creigh Deeds is going to be joining us. And so I'm looking forward to that. We're going to have a real IMHO style convo for Mr. Deeds. Glad he could join us. So definitely tell a friend. And remember, June primary is coming up, June 20th, I believe. The primaries leading into the general election in November. So very, very important. And we're going to be hitting them, Max, leading up to that June 20th with all the candidates that serve our listening area. We got listeners worldwide, but hey, it's a big deal in VA right now, particularly Central Virginia. So that's what we got for y'all. But first and foremost, May. We are still in this month of May and been talking to our good friend Gene Cash. And he brought some friends along with him. We have Aiden, we have Laura, we have Trey, the good people from the Council Alliance of Virginia. How are y'all today?
We're doing well. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Trey and Gene, y'all, we'll get y'all to unmute. Can y'all hear us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There we go. We got you. Live
good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah. So thank you all for coming once again. Gene, we've been in touch and we've been wanting to do this show. So this is a great way to close off this May, because for those that don't know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, right?
Yes, sir.
And so this is a topic that we've had Gene and Trey on before. Glad to make the acquaintance of Laura and Aiden. So much is connected to mental health, right? So much. And so there's, as Gene has educated us before, there's a lot of foundational things. There's a lot of roots to things that's in our everyday life that in turns affect our mental health. So we want to dig into that and bring that awareness back to the forefront for this first hour. And so before we do that, Gene, I'm going to kick it to you, my man, and I'm going to let you, reintroduce yourself. And maybe those that may be new IMHO listeners and viewers, go ahead and give them the business, and you can, further introduce your team you brought today.
Charles, my brother, I appreciate you, Max and Razor, allowing us to come on your platform to continue to push and talk about mental health and caring for the community. CAVA's been in the community probably about 11, 12 years in Charlottesville and Richmond area. We really try to support our people as much as possible. We have great initiatives, and with what I brought today is my team. And I have the Director of Community-Based Service, Trey Harris. He's with us today. Then I have one of our newest outpatient therapists, Laura Heck. And we have a seasoned young man who was sitting at the Waffle House with Razor one day. And his name is Aiden Marriage, LPC.
Over some eggs and grits.
And this brother called me up talking about, hey, man, I know somebody. I said, okay, all right. And it was Razor, right? Razor's they doing their thing out there in the community. So I have a great team. We're here to help and uplift, especially during Mental Health Awareness Month. But we believe we do this every day. It's not just about 1 month. It's highlighted this month, but we believe 24/7, 365, we want to uplift and make sure people have the support they need to deal with serious mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, Gene, and thanks to the whole team. So in this 2023 mental health awareness, like what's at the top of the agenda, so to speak? Gene, and particularly, but Laura, Aiden, Trey, whoever wants to kick it off. When we think about talking to our community, right, and we talk about it's the year 2023, and we talk about all of the access, right, because that's like mental health services, as we talked about, is sort of a new thing, you know, like for particularly the Black and brown communities. Like as far as it starting to become sort of a norm, sort of just part of our healthcare, and not something that's taboo, right? Mm-hmm. So when we look at 2023 and where Black and brown communities are over at CAVA, like what is the mission right now as we sit here in May 2023? Whoever wants to lead that off.
Charles, can I ask a question before they get started?
Of course.
Gene.
What's up, Doc?
I know in our community, we make jokes about it, but how are we going to feed these kids during summertime? What are they going to be doing while we at work? Like, these are things that in our community, I know is an issue. I hear them, just like when me and Aiden were sitting there at the Waffle House. What should be a basic way of living is a stressful time for parents, especially single parents.
Yes.
Can we start off with that?
What should we be doing to help these kids? Definitely leisure, recreation, out there in the community, providing opportunities for them to get out there, because when COVID, everyone's shut down, locked down. And I believe that family time is definitely important, but I know people have to work, people have to feed their families, but as much as you can, break bread together. I believe community, the local government should definitely be creating programs for kids to have access to, Boys and Girls Club, anything available to help these kids get out and be active, definitely with our kids.
Gotcha. Now, so to the initial question, is that the forefront of the purview? Like when people think of CAVA, people think my family, my children. Like we definitely need somebody to talk to. We definitely need some guidelines, some walkthroughs to still deal with what we as a people and our communities are facing. Like what is the sort of the pitch of CAVA right now when it comes to mental health in our communities?
To be honest with you, man, we've been ever since 2017. With the domestic terrorist attack that came down on Charlottesville, Virginia. We've had the racial trauma initiative, and we are definitely training our staff to be more racially aware, racially sensitive, and racially responsible. So when you're talking about what's our viewpoint right now, is looking at loss and the intangible losses that continue, the tangible and intangible losses that are being suffered by our community. So when you see another shooting, was it the young man who got shot by the white man, Carl Yard, I believe his name was?
I think that's right.
Yeah. And go back to George Floyd, go back to Arbery, we go back to continually watching. I think there was a Marine who just choked and killed a young man in New York. And those are the losses that we continue to hear about. So in some ways, we're looking at how, I know a lot of our clientele, since 2017, we've seen an increase in people of color, Black people coming to therapy, which has been very, very helpful to them. Our staff are becoming more racially aware and racially sensitive, even brokering permission for race to be put into the room. So one of the things I think what we're looking at is light loss. We're looking at the loss of hope. We're looking at the loss of safety. And we're looking at how these invisible wounds continue to impact our people in our community. So that's forefront every day with us.
Right. And listening to Eugene, and again, thank you for joining the show. That was one of the questions that I had, is that are people, and I imagine some of them are people coming to your facility seeking help specifically related to the violence that's happening in the community, where it may be a white person taking a black person's life? Or is that just kind of a piece of, or the tipping point of them dealing with so many other issues that are impacting their lives? And so how do we get to, the crux of what we're actually dealing with, or what we're internalizing, what us being on that brink of already dealing with some mental health concerns, and then those things watching those things happening in our community, and just kind of, spiraling because of that,
Yeah, Max, it's always good to hear your voice. Good to see you. I agree. How we look at it is, and I want to give my team, not just me.
Absolutely. Don't be shy, guys. Your first time on the radio. Don't be shy.
So one of the things I do see is like this trauma, Max. This just everyday life trauma, bills, stress,
right,
physical abuse, sexual abuse. People are coming in for those things, but then it's exasperated to the racial trauma. And one of the things, what I see a lot of times is the brokering of permission. A lot of times with our clients, if you do not create the space for race, it's not going to come up. You can have a mass shooting, and people will come in and talk just like nothing ever happened. So, because we've been so conditioned to just sit with it inside. They go to work after a mass shooting and act like everything's normal. And what I'm trying to say is, yes, people are coming in for everyday life issues, and we're seeing an uptick in people who will be able to talk about the mass shootings, the collective grief, the death that is happening to Black and brown bodies.
And so what's the healing for that? Can I take it just a step further? What's the healing for that?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at, is like, it's Gene, I heard what you were saying, and I was trying to beat you to the punch. And so what Max's point is, like you said, like there was sort of a rejuvenated energy after 2017 for this area. But we're 2023 now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like so, and I know there's plenty of people who feel like that we're not better off. Right. So and Laura, like, maybe this is good for you, like with the outreach work that you do, like when it comes to people seeing all this going on, whether it's been the political landscape and all that kind of thing, like, yeah, it's like, what else can we do? Like how is the message renewed? When we say we're bringing mental health awareness in May of 2023, how is that message different than May of 2017?
Yeah, I think that's it's a big question. It's a hard question, right? And I think, like Gene was saying, people will come in for different reasons. They'll come in because of other mental health things that are going on, or troubles that they're having in their family. But when we get to broker that conversation and say, hey, race is a factor here. Like, I know that my position as a white clinician in this room means something different, and it's going to affect our relationship. So let's talk about it. And the biggest thing that you see in our clients when we bring it up is like just the sigh of relief of, okay, I don't have to put on a show. I can talk about the things that are actually important to me, that are actually impacting me. And then we can start having those difficult conversations. And I think that's how we move forward and continue to heal from the trauma, the cultural trauma, the racial trauma. Is we have to talk about it. We can't be afraid to talk about it, because it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but we have to have the conversations.
That's true.
Yeah, I just want to say that kind of piggybacking off of what Gene always tells us, is that sometimes we tend to fall asleep when it comes to this racial work. And one thing that we always do at CAVA is we have monthly meetings that's geared towards talking about race, talking about how we move through whiteness, how Black people move through their Blackness. And I just think it's really important to just consistently have these conversations, and always being able to, like you said, Laura, broker that conversation with them. And one thing that's changed in the 5 years that I've been at CAVA is on the intake now, we actually have like racial trauma questions that's brought up for white and black people and other people of color as well. But I just think during the intake, it's really important for clients to feel that comfortability and that stability that they can have in a counselor's office.
Right. Trey, why you so quiet, Trey?
I'm trying to. I'm just really enjoying hearing my Gene talk and hearing my coworkers talk. But if I could I wanted to come in too. So thank you for bringing me in. But
yes,
what I love about CAVA, what we do at CAVA, especially as Director of Community-Based Services, when I'm out there in the field, in the community, working with these clients and then working with these families as well, is when we come in for a mental health issue, and the way we work through structured family therapy is one of the big things that kind of, I feel like, works hand in hand with our racial trauma work, is the idea that we are there to free the symptom bearer. So oftentimes when we come into the home, there's one individual that's been identified that is having the mental health struggle, whether it's the son, whether it's the daughter, whether it's the cousin who moved in because mom and dad couldn't take care of them anymore. And oftentimes the focus and the energy is put into that one individual in the family.
Right.
But what we do at CAVA, when we come into these families, we expand it to the whole system.
Good.
Because as we know in our walks through life and our walks in our communities, that oftentimes it takes a village to raise a child, and if the child is going through something, the whole village had something to do with it as well.
That's right.
So that's why I appreciate that we're able to expand it to not just the individual child or individual client, but to the parent system, to the subsystems, the siblings, to the extended family. And that's really the basis of our work. And then when you bring race into that as well, it just adds a whole nother layer of intensity and intimacy in that relational piece that we bring with our work, our therapeutic work at CAVA, just makes that therapeutic relationship so much more richer.
Right.
And it allows us to help guide that treatment and that healing just a little bit more than I feel like we can do at other agencies. So when we talk about, I think it was, what the question was, how do we heal? How do we foster that healing? Or how do we, is that the intention? Yes, I do think it's intentional on CAVA. I do think we intentionally come in with the idea that we're coming in with a narrow focus, and we're there to help the family extend that focus to everything that the family's going through, because mental health and racial trauma aren't separate things. They're intertwined. You can't talk about trauma without talking about race. You can't talk about race without talking about trauma. And that's what we do with CAVA.
Well, I can appreciate, thank you, Trey, for your response. I can appreciate that, because oftentimes when you're speaking with organizations who provide a service, or an organization that potentially provides funding for someone else to be able to provide a service, they always look at it from the standpoint of providing the support to the person that specifically needs the help, or providing it to the person in, or just simply not being able to understand that this person then goes out and is immersed in this racial, this social group, or this neighborhood, or this situation, or this type of home culture, or what have you. And for whatever reason, a lot of people have a difficult time being able to just understand the concept that, yes, you're giving them tools that may be appropriate for the situation that you happen to be meeting them in at this moment. Let's say school, for example, but then they go back home and they're immersed in all of these other different scenarios that isn't conducive to what you may be trying to help them with or through, right? And so by being able to touch everyone else that they're kind of dealing with in their lives, helps to bring that kind of full circle healing.
Absolutely. I agree. And Gene, that's one thing that I appreciate about you and your approach, you know, of course, that's implemented through your team, is that holistic approach. And really, Max, at the root of it, like, that's what our show kind of, you know, is about. Get you. That's why we have these conversations, because it's like in so many ways. Even with our guests today, with all the work that they're doing and we're going to talk about, there's so many things we just sort of medicate, you know. It's like, but nobody wants to get to the cure, because to get to the cure, you got to get to the root. And sometimes it hurts, like when you dig at a root, right? It's gonna hurt. so you know, people just sort of want to patch things, you know. So I definitely appreciate it and applaud you all, like when it comes to that holistic approach, where it's not just one thing, it's not just one individual, right? So I think Razor has something for Trey.
I did have a question for Trey, but I think it might be better suited between Trey and the young lady. All right. Let me, because we live in Charlottesville and we know that race is always an issue, like Gene said. Let me give you a scenario, and I'm anxious to know how you would approach this. I'm a middle-aged white man who my daughter had a child by a black guy, which I didn't approve of. I didn't want my daughter having a child by a black man. Now, I love my grandchild, but I'm forced into this race conversation that I really didn't want to be in. The trauma that I'm going through is that my daughter stepped outside of our race. And now I'm forced to pick up a battle that I didn't want around my coworkers and my other family members. How do you approach that person? Because mixed race is something that goes on here in Charlottesville very heavily.
Yeah, that's, I think, you know, in any of these conversations, the place to start is compassion and understanding that, yeah, okay, this person has now been forced into a place that he wasn't ready for. But, you know, welcome to any race relations. Nobody was ready for it, right? Like these conversations. And it's okay for him to be uncomfortable about it and sit in it and recognize how his position in white privilege has allowed him to not have to think about these things in the past. But here he is, now he has to, right? And you know, the best we can do is help him process why is it a problem that, you know, that his daughter stepped out of his race? Why is this uncomfortable? Why, you know, where has racism been a presence for you? What have you learned? What are you ready to unlearn? And it takes time. It's a process, and you know, we're happy to help people through that process.
Did you want Trey? Thank you for that. Did you want Trey to respond to that too, Razor? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because I was initially thinking about Trey, because I'm like, you as a black man kind of representing his trauma, trying to talk to him and get him to open up. I initially was like, yeah, let me ask Trey this. But then I had to think about, okay, how does the young white lady tell the white man that it's okay, that your lineage is going to be changed for forever?
And Razor, her name is Laura, by the way.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Miss Laura. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Trey.
Yeah, I would love to answer this. No, I would love to answer this question, but Razor, could you? It broke up at the beginning of your question. Can you repeat the question, real quick?
Yeah, what I was saying was, I was wondering how you would approach a middle-aged white man when you pretty much represent the trauma that he's going through about this race conversation.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So, two things come up for me, and Gina sees smiling, and because I'm wondering how real do I want to get.
It's your choice, my brother.
And the gene in my head is telling me, bring the intensity, bring the truth. So I'm going to answer that from two sides. All right, Razor. So the first side, I'll answer as a mental health professional. I have been in that situation where I've had to work with individuals who are racist, white individuals who would tell me to my face that I don't like you because you're black. I don't like you because of your blackness. I don't like you because of what you represent in my life. And I don't think if I didn't work at CAVA, I wouldn't have been able to handle it the way I did. But because of our work that we do, we learn about privileged selves, like privileged and subjugated selves. Without going into too much detail, so I can get through this. It's the idea that as a Black mental health professional, I have two sides of myself that are coming up in a situation like this. I have my subjugated self as the Black male, meaning not that I'm subjugated because I'm a Black male, but in this society, systemic racism that I'm walking through, that is coming from a subjugated position. So as a white person is telling me they don't like me, or they have hatred towards me because of my Blackness, that is subjugation in that role. But as the role as the mental health professional with the higher education, with the skills to foster that healing and to foster that treatment and that growth, I'm coming from a privileged position. So how do I war? The question I had to deal with is, how do I war with my subjugated self being activated while I'm in a privileged role? And so I was able to, through that training, I was able to be in relationship with this person. I was able to talk with them, sit with them, walk with them as they were talking about their trauma, as they were talking about their views on why they have these beliefs, these racist ideologies and beliefs, while I was managing my subjugated self of what was activating in me. And as the mental health professional, I was able to, like I said, continue working with this person until I wasn't able to anymore. But it showed me that I could do that you can have a conversation about race and it can still be about the betterment of that person's mental health. It doesn't have to be a or, it can be it's an and. So that's how I answer that first question.
Can I jump in with you?
Yeah, please.
Can I jump in? And Razor, I don't mean to intercede, but I want to give.
No. Come on.
So one of the things that we teach and train is that when you have a situation like this, where this white man has been thrusted into a world that he may have been taught to hate and not want, the first thing we can ignore it. We can ignore it and not even acknowledge that it's happening and just talk around like business as usual. We can confront it, but we know when we confront, it tends to escalate. One of the things we believe in is constructive engagement. How can we engage with this man and what like Trey said it so well. As a therapist, we walk in, we have a privilege, we have a response. With what's great privilege as a therapist, we have a greater responsibility. Right? So then we must be able to acknowledge and validate where he's at. Now we may just because we acknowledge and validate it doesn't mean we agree with it, right? Especially being as a Black man, I'm not going to agree to self-hate. But then we have to challenge, and I think Laura referenced that very well. We have to ask questions, we have to be curious, and we want to challenge his internalized attitudes, values, and beliefs, specifically around white supremacist thoughts and ideology. Okay. And then we want to make a request. We want to ask them to join us in this and have a relationship around his trauma where he can love himself more, love his daughter more, and definitely create space for the baby who is just being a part of our society. So I hope that makes sense, but it's definitely about constructive engagement.
Yeah. Thank you, Gene. And Trey, did you have a follow-up as well you were getting to, or were you good?
Yeah, so this is where it gets real, all right? So it's funny that you asked this question. It's not funny that you asked this question, but it's interesting you asked this question because this is a snapshot of what I walked through. So my wife is white. I am in an interracial marriage. And these conversations are the conversations we have to have in our marriage. And I guess to give you some background, I've been with my wife for 10 years. We met in college at James Madison University. We got married almost about 3 years ago now. And with the training and race work that I've had at CAVA, I've been able to engage with my wife through our marriage and conversations with race that before that wasn't even in my purview. Even as a educated young black male at the time, like knowing that race was going to be an issue, those things we're going to have to talk about, but the complexity that it involves also when you're navigating a marriage and race and subjugation and privilege through your marriage was on a whole nother level than anything else before going into that relationship. But my marriage now, because of those conversations, it's constant work. And so when you ask that question of if I'm working with a middle-aged man who's having issues with his daughter marrying outside of his race, the first thing that's going to come up for me, and we call this POTS work, person to the therapist. How do your wounds bump up against your client's wounds? So I can't talk to this man without it reminding me of my own reality.
Right.
So so when I say that, so to be honest, how would I work with that? I have to be constantly doing personal work in my marriage, in my relationship with my family, with her family, speaking with her father, speaking with my father, speaking with my mother. You know, the work is always there, but because I'm able to do that work on a complex, intimate level with my own work, I can lean into that with this father. I don't have to tell this man my whole story, but because I have a point of reference that touches with his life and touches with mine, I can lean in because I can use it two ways, right? If I was unaware, I could use it as a place of contention and really go in on this individual from that place of from that wound. And I'm going to reference my supervisor, Corey Love, and one of the most brilliant things he's ever said to me is operating from the scar and not the wound. Being able to come from a place of healing and not from a place of hurt and pain. So because I've been able to do that work here at CAVA, because I've been able to engage in those race conversations in my own life and in the most intimate relationship in my life, my marriage, I can do that with these individuals, especially this hypothetical situation with this middle-aged father who didn't ask for this, but is in it, and how is he going to navigate the complexities of loving his daughter while also confronting his hate?
Thank you for that, man. Now talking about operating from the scar instead of the wound, how hard is it for any of you, not just Trey, Laura, whoever wants to speak up, how hard is it to know and believe wholeheartedly that something is just inherently wrong? You know what I mean? Like whether we're talking about racism or sexism, whatever the case is, but you have to find a middle ground. Like you have to teach someone to cope with their issues and not necessarily, I guess, solve their issues. You know what I mean? Because I'm sure, like even in this scenario that we've given, you're gonna run into some people that don't want to change. You know what I mean? Like they're just like, nope, how I was raised, what I believe. But you, as the professional, you still have to make sure that they're able to interact with, you know, like with society, with their family, whatever the case is, even with this thorn in their flesh, so to speak. Like, so how do you deal as professionals when you feel wholeheartedly something is just flat out wrong, but you got to meet somebody halfway?
So I often tell people when they first come into my office.
Keep yourself from turning red when they clearly said something. Tick you all.
Take acting classes.
Yeah, sometimes a good acting job. That's helpful as well. But in all seriousness, I tell my clients when they first come into my office that we're on this journey together. We're like in a canoe, but unfortunately, they're the only one with the oar. So I can help them navigate, point to different directions, and help them see things in a different perspective. But they have to take themselves there, and I can't do it for them.
Gotcha. You want to add anything else?
Yeah, it can be hard, right? You know, and you know, Gene said I'm a new outpatient therapist, and so I'm really learning how to do a lot of that sometimes of you know, being able to see everyone on their journey as meeting them where they are. You know, where are they on that journey? Are they like really close to having everything figured out and, you know, owning their life, or are they in a really, really dark place and just doing the best with what they have? And I think when you can look at anybody with, again, that compassion of, you know, you are where you are, and, you know, we have to come with no judgment. And I think that's really important, especially in conversations about race, and especially about conversations about mental health and, you know, with anyone. We don't have to agree with someone to see their humanity.
Spot on. Thank you.
Yeah, Charles, I just want to add to that. To answer your question, like when someone comes into our office and something's like they say something inherently wrong, I think a really good part about working at CAVA is having the supervision that we do have. I feel very open to walk into any of my other counselors' colleagues' door and have a conversation about race and see like, hey, how do I navigate this next time they come in, and have that conversation that can be helpful and healing.
And I know Max has something for you, but one thing that I feel like this is leading into is like when you all are, again, we talked about that holistic approach, right? So when you all are faced with clients, how do you handle bringing in second or third party professionals? Like, because there's a pretty strong belief out there that like our diets contribute to our mental health, right? Like just so many societal factors contribute to the mental health, and maybe parts of our healthcare that we're not aware is impacting the mental health. Like, so what's the process like when you recognize those things, and then like what does that look like to bring in the extra help that maybe need?
Like from outside agencies, is that what you mean? Like getting extra help for our clients?
Yeah. Or like I said, it could be any like other aspect of this person's health that you see as affecting their mental health.
Yeah, that holistic approach is very important and something that we take very seriously at CAVA. We have relationships with most of our other community providers that are working with our clients as well, talking to them once a week, maybe sometimes more depending on the case. But I do think there's a lot of value in a lot of the most successful cases that I've worked on have been where multiple community providers are coming together, having team meetings, talking to each other, making sure that we're all on the same page for that client. And whether it be the dietitian or their primary care doctor, whatever, we're trying to have those conversations.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question that I'm hoping to get Jean's response on, but any of the other counselors here can respond to as well. I'm sure that there are maybe other counselors or just people in general who kind of question why race is kind of at the core or so much embedded in the model of counseling that you all provide. And I think that a lot of people just view counseling as a scenario and opportunity where someone is seeking to be understood, they're seeking to be heard, they're seeking, to come to get to answers. So they just want to be able to talk something through with someone. And so, in I would assume some people's opinion, and maybe even mine to some degree, it doesn't matter if you green, if you can see my humanity and sit in my situation with me and help me to reach the healing that I'm looking for without looking down on me or, coming into the scenario with any biases or things like that, then that's all that I'm really seeking. And I imagine there's a lot of people that feel like that's all that counseling should be. Even if we're talking about people being dying from the knee on the neck on the side of the road or anything like that. That's really all that I'm looking for, and that's all that counseling should be. But this model is, a large component of that, or it is race matters, and so I'm sure people are asking, why does this feels maybe more like a social justice type of group rather than just a counseling service. And so I just put that out there because I'm sure there's someone out there asking, and just trying to maybe, even if they don't disagree, just kind of seeking to understand the whole process or whole model of your counseling group, Jean. So if you want to respond to that, or
I definitely want to hear Jean's response to this. Why are you so unapologetically black, Jean? Let me sum that up for you.
You know what, Jack? When you bring that question, it somewhat brings tears to my eyes.
I didn't mean to offend you now. Wait a minute.
No,
I'm just joking.
No offense at all, but just the truth and honesty of asking that question. Because I was whitewashed. Max, I was trained to be a white clinician my entire career. And that's over, I've been doing this for 30 some years. And then probably 2016, like I told you guys before, I had an awakening. I had a racial awakening. And you're right. The centrality of whiteness has taught us to not bring in our whole selves. And we've had to compartmentalize my color, my culture, my heritage, my history, in order to keep whiteness or people comfortable. And I'm not saying that I want to make white people uncomfortable. I'm just saying I want to become a whole person. And if I can't bring my whole self into the room, then I'm still walking in our historical past of white supremacy, what we've been taught. And so, yeah, and what I call it, because we've been pushing this initiative since 2017 pretty heavily, and I've gotten a lot of feedback, negative and positive, around how come you keep pushing this narrative. But what I glean from is the peace and serenity from our people of color, and also from our white people who have been walking in racial oblivion, right? And not understanding how white people walk in this world and continue to harm and impact people of color. For people of color to understand how psychological homelessness, like they don't know where they belong. I think you mentioned earlier, when I go home, I'm this person, but I gotta go to work, but I gotta be this person. So you gotta code switch on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So I really believe that it's not it's maybe a social justice thing, but it is really about bringing therapy to a whole different level or context, and bringing in something that should have been there the entire time. When I was doing research, when I was at VCU teaching for 1 year, I was looking for, where are our black theorists? Where are people of color? Where are our articles at when it comes to talking about us? And it wasn't available. And then when I tried to purchase them, those books were like $300-400 a piece. But I did find them. So what is that telling you? And with the current society, what's happening in our current culture today about CRT and canceling, wanting us not to talk about our history, is one of the main reasons why I believe we have to keep talking about it. And yes, you cannot talk about race without talking about trauma. And you can't talk about trauma without talking about race unless you're trying to erase us. The sad part is, what I see it from white people, but I see it from my people. My people, even my own mother says, leave the white people alone, boy. Just leave them alone. Just leave them alone. Because it's not going to be good for you. And I said, it's good for everybody. It's good for everybody, man. So that's why I'm pushing for racially aware, racially sensitive, and racially competent therapists to be able to help and heal this community.
Now, Lauren and Aiden, I would love to hear your response to that, because I just have to imagine that you all have had that question of huh? Is that therapy? Like, y'all seem a little militant over there. I'm being honest with you. I got to imagine somebody has questioned you, Lauren, and they're like,
yes,
y'all for social justice, or y'all for psychology? Counseling.
We definitely run into that all the time. Why are you making this about race? This is not about race. But like Gene says,
give me a real answer, Aiden. Give me one.
What kind of real answer are you looking for?
The honest one.
Like when that family,
I want to say.
Yeah, like when that family or friend been like, I thought you were gonna be a therapist or a counselor. Like that's not therapy. Like y'all race baiting. Well, y'all just blaming white people. That kind of talk.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think when we blame white people for all this stuff, I when we feel uncomfortable, it's not up to our clients or up to people of color to take care of us because of my feeling. And I think an honest answer would be that I would tell them that that bumps up against my whiteness in that session, and that trying to have an open conversation about, how my race is affecting that conversation, and just try to open it up to be, I guess, clear and concise with my clients. Because as a white clinician, I do have very different life experiences than people of color. So I understand that there's certain things that I say and do in session that might bump up with my clients. So just trying to have them be open and honest with me by being open and honest with them about where I'm at.
So do you have to feel guilty just because you're white?
That was my question. So are you apologetic, or do you go to a place of trying to understand? Like,
definitely from a place of just trying to understand, just because this is embedded in our work every day. And I've never done anything like this. I grew up in Pennsylvania and moved here 5 years ago, started working for Gene, and this was like groundbreaking stuff. Never done anything like this with anyone. And I walked through my white oblivion. And 5 years ago, if you asked me that, I would have been like, yeah, I don't see color. I love everybody. I'm a therapist. I'm just supposed to help people. And then, like, Gene always tells me I came in with my coat on, like my therapist coat. And you got to take it off and, just be real about a lot of stuff. And, it's continued work. It's hard work. But it's not up to anyone else to do it. It's up to me.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to the continued work that I have to keep doing to keep removing that jacket in those situations.
Therapy for the therapist.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say I was one of those people that when I first interviewed with CAVA, I really didn't know that the race work was part of it, and was kind of like, oh, okay, hi, this is not something I'd ever had to think about, because that's my place in white privilege, is that I've never had to have these conversations or really think about it on this depth. And it's been a real awakening, I think. Absolutely. You take the blinders off and you start seeing things that you didn't see before, and it's important to sit in that and the discomfort and just keep working through it. But it is one of those things when you do take those blinders off, it's, oh, you see it,
right,
and you see it everywhere.
That's what I was gonna say. Is the world a better or worse place when you see it?
Both.
I mean, I like that.
You can see, a lot of the things that infuriate you. If you just get so angry sometimes and worry and all of those things. But at the same time, you can also see the little changes that people are making, the progress that we're making, the conversations we're having, the hope, because it is there.
Yeah. Thank you all. So I think we may have just a couple more minutes if you guys can stick with us through the hour break, because our next guest is not quite here. Because my next question, I wouldn't mind making that an Ask Max if I have your permission. It's around mental health. Can we make the Ask Max a mental health?
That's fine.
Okay.
I do want to talk about kids, though. Maybe we can come back, because our kids need some help.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So family, we're gonna go ahead and take this break. Bringing awareness to mental health with none other than CAVA, Counseling Alliance of Virginia. So stay tuned. Much more show, y'all. See you next time.
I get to say that. With more hip hop and R&B right after these quick words from our sponsors. It's 101 Jams. It's the all new.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
In my humble opinion, only on 101.3 Jams.
Yes. I am HO Talk Show, Sir Charles, Miss Max, back like we never left. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Tell a friend, because we are live on air, and we are just so delighted right now to be joined by none other than this segment's distinguished guest, the incumbent senator for Virginia. For our district, was District 25, changing to District 11, right? So we're going to get a little education on that. None other than Senator Creigh Deeds. Mr. Deeds, how you doing, sir?
Thank you, Charles. No misters in my family.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
the opportunity.
Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time on your busy campaign trail to stop by and to talk to the good people, not only of our listening area, but all those who may be streaming wherever they are. Yep. And so, a little icebreaker. I heard you're a pretty big music fan. Is that right?
I'm a pretty big music fan. Yeah.
Okay. So what's in your playlist right now? Tell me about it.
I leave it on stream. You know, whatever comes on, I listen to. On my iPod, I could have anything from Hank Williams to Miles Davis to Tupac Shakur to the Everly Brothers. You know, I've got a little Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke.
I like that. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm trying to envision you, riding down with the windows, down, listening to Tupac. I'm trying to envision that, Creigh, but I believe you.
Let me tell you what, my son was going to be the first bluegrass rapper.
Ah, okay.
He would go from Ralph Stanley to Tupac. That was what he.
I love it. Yeah. That kind of sounds like my playlist.
You play any instruments?
No, I'm lucky to play a radio. I was never disciplined enough to learn that instrument, but my son could play anything.
That's good stuff. So so like we said, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by Senator Creigh Deeds. So Creigh, let's kind of get to business then. And again, thank you for joining IMHO Talk Show. We like to consider ourselves a trusted voice of our community. A lot of folks make a lot of recommendations of people who come here and sit in that exact seat that you're in to have real conversation about like what's affecting particularly Black and brown communities, because we all know what affects one community inherently affects the next community.
Absolutely.
Right. But before we start, for those that don't know, though, give us sort of what's going on with the change from the 25th district to the 11th district. Sure. Is there some gerrymandering going on, Creigh?
Well,
let's be honest.
I think gerrymandering is something that occurred in the past. In the past, legislators pretty much drew the districts. Whoever was in charge at the time would draw the districts, and they drew them to suit the incumbents. And the people passed the constitutional amendment in 2021 that essentially created this bipartisan redistricting commission. Now, the process that was set up in that commission was flawed, but it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court picked special masters from out of state who really didn't have any incentive to create anything for anybody here. And they drew districts that are more compact and make more sense probably. This district, what I lost from the territory that I represented before was Highland, Bath, Allegheny, Covington, Buena Vista, Lexington, Rockbridge. What I gained was Amherst and part of Louisa, and some precincts in Albemarle that I've represented before. So the district's okay with me.
Yeah. Okay. So, in full honesty, like the way that strikes me, and I'm glad you mentioned those exact outlines because I wasn't fully aware of all those that were involved. So you lost your hometown, but now you include more of a region that like that your competitor kind of is more local to? Like, do you feel like, does that bother you at all? Do you feel like you have a good relationship with those folks?
You know, I've been representing this community for 22 years. I've spent probably more time in Charlottesville and Albemarle County than I've spent in Bath County or anywhere else. So I'm fine with the district. You know, what the district I represented was cut up 3 different ways. You know, the Bath County and Highland were put in with Rockingham and part of Augusta. That was only about 3% of the area I represent. About 30% of the district I represent, 34% of the district I represent was put in with the rest of Augusta, Stanton, Waynesboro, part of Roanoke and Botetourt. And then more than 60% of the district I represent is here. So it made sense for me to be here.
Gotcha.
So I go to your website and I can't get past this first paragraph that says that you passed more bills than any other member of the General Assembly. How does that happen?
It happens because I really think my job is to make government relevant and work for the people I represent. And that means that I've got to be able to use the seniority I've accumulated to work for the people I represent. I also have to build relationships because you know what? I can't control myself whether I'm in the minority or majority, but I can't take time off when I'm in the minority. I've got to be able to get things done. I'm in the majority right now. So what what VPAP, and I'm not telling you anything you can't look up, but VPAP says that I introduced 38 bills this past year. 26 of them passed. Nobody else got that many bills passed. But this thing called the Cardinal News, which is an online news service centered in Roanoke, says that I do a pretty remarkable job of getting bills passed, whether I'm in the minority or majority. It's not a new thing for me to have the most bills passed. I use my seniority to get things done. And of those bills that I got passed, 10 of them were resolutions. You know, I'm the chairman, right? I've been co-chair, but I'm the chair of the Judiciary Committee right now. The chair of the Judiciary Committee has a lot to do with appointing judges. I think that people need to be able to trust the justice system, and they're not going to trust the justice system if they've got all judges that are just old white guys like me. You've got to have judges. I've done a lot to elevate women and minorities to the bench. In fact, next month, there's going to be a judge. The first time a black judge will take the bench in Lynchburg. It will occur next month, and that's going to occur because I insisted.
Well, we can not trust black judges too. Like we want them just to be fair, you know.
There's one in particular, right?
Want them to be fair. But I've worked hard to make sure that we have a diverse judiciary. I'm part of a small group of legislators, Democrats. In 2021, when we expanded the Court of Appeals, I worked to make sure we had appointed 8 new judges to the Court of Appeals. 4 of them are women, 4 of them are men, 4 of them are black, 4 of them are white.
Gotcha. So Creigh, with all those great accomplishments, what's your rebuttal to the folks that say that the system is broken, and if you're the incumbent, then it would automatically attach you to what they don't currently like about Virginia?
Look, I just say to people, look at my record. I've stood up for a lot of things over the years. I've got a lot of things done. And having the incumbent makes sense. If I'm returned to office, I'll be no less than the second most senior Democrat in the Senate and in the General Assembly. I will continue to be chair of Judiciary. I'm on the Senate Finance Committee. I'm the first person since 1980 to represent Charlottesville and be on the Senate Finance Committee. Awesome. What that means, you know, here's the thing. The 800-pound gorilla in this community is University of Virginia. UVA is always going to have friends. They're always going to have people look out for them. But there's money in the budget this year for the Jefferson School because I put it in there. There's money in there for the Nelson County Heritage Center because I put it in there. There's money in there for Bennett's Village, on All Abilities Playground at Penn Park because I put it in there. You know, there are lots of things. There's money in there for a peer review counseling center downtown because I put it in there. I mean, you have to have somebody that looks out for the community represented, and I do that.
Let me back up to that response you gave about the judges. In your opinion, how has diversifying the judges had an impact, a tangible impact on the criminal justice system?
Well, that's a difficult question. You almost have to go back and look you have to look almost at an individual level to look at and see how each judge has done. I don't know. You know, I don't know that we've really examined the whole system to see what kind of impact the system has produced. But I can tell you on an individual basis that when you make the bench look more like the community, I think that's bound to produce a positive result. over the long haul. Maybe not in an individual case.
Yeah. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you're just tuning in, or if you still haven't told your friends and family yet, we are joined by Senator Creigh Deeds. Great conversation for your community. And remember to comment on any questions. And before I see a couple in there, and I'll check here in a second once hand it over to Max. But as far as we get to the priorities, Creigh. So just to go down the list, no particular order. The healthcare, including mental health, education, gun safety reform, gender equity and reproductive rights, voting rights and democracy, environment, jobs in the economy, public safety, and criminal justice. So these are things that are on your site as sort of campaign priorities. And of course, those are sort of broad topics, and they affect every community, particularly here in Charlottesville. So of course, sort of the titles, the headlines, the hot button topics, buzzwords, everybody's going to use those. But in particular, let's start, one, you being a lawyer.
Right.
So let's start from maybe the, criminal justice and public safety.
Sure.
There's been an uptick in crime here in Charlottesville. As I understand it, you're an avid hunter as well.
I haven't hunted. I haven't really fired a gun. My son got sick about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and I've not touched a gun since then.
Oh wow! Okay.
Not fired a gun.
Gotcha. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. All right, thank you for that info. But the question remains in regards to criminal justice and public safety and whatnot. What do you think we're missing when it comes to gun rights and the criminal justice reform system? When it comes to keeping it okay and protecting the rights of folks who can be law-abiding citizens and use their firearms properly, and to vet those before they even get the firearms, and to convince the Virginians that there's a difference between those folks and being serious about cracking down on keeping guns off of inner city streets.
Right.
Because I feel like the lines get blurred a lot. People think you're going to take my guns if we're talking about fixing gun violence.
A lot of people just think that any sort of gun reform, they think that the Second Amendment is an absolute right. The Second Amendment is not an absolute right. Does not confer absolute rights. The First Amendment does not confer absolute rights. There are limits on everything. In 2020, we passed legislation to create a universal background check on purchases. So we've tightened up to some extent, but we've got to do more. We tried to get a bill passed this year to basically say, as simple as this, a lot of the guns that are out there right now used in crime are guns that are stolen. A lot of those guns are stolen from vehicles. We tried to pass a bill this year to penalize leaving your car unlocked with a gun inside. We couldn't get that to pass the House of Delegates. We've got to be to the point where we have mature discussions about firearms, and we just don't. We either choose up tribal sides almost. Either for them or you're against them. Well, we've got to acknowledge that the guns are part of our culture. There are guns out there, but there has to be limits. There absolutely have to be limits on the way the guns are used and the way the guns are owned.
Yeah. And the other piece of that, I know Razor has something for you as well, but the criminal justice reform, because Black and brown communities still statistically get the short end of the stick, when it comes to the to their outcomes, when it comes to the justice system. My thing is, why do you think it's so hard for us to get serious with gun registration? Because I even saw a report recently to where there really is no strong database of a gun registry.
There's no strong database. There's no registration at all. What in a perfect world, the only registration that really exists is for automatic weapons. Automatic weapons, I think it was 1938 when the Machine Gun Act passed at the federal level. Automatic weapons ownership is basically outlawed. If you own one, it's registered by the Federal Bureau, and there's just a hand. We ought to have the same sort of registration for semi-automatic firearms, the AK-47 type platform. We don't. We just, as I said, we don't have mature discussions about firearms. We've just chosen up sides. We're either for them or against them, and it's difficult to get people to reason on these issues, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree. But I have a pretty strong belief, Creigh. I have a belief that as long as Black and brown communities are being negatively impacted by gun violence, that's the reason why a lot of powers that be will not get serious about gun registry, because as you mentioned, like a lot of the guns show up as being stolen and whatnot. I feel like that if we were serious about tracking where these guns come from, that would fix a lot of the crime issues. And it wouldn't penalize the black and brown folks. It would actually penalize the folks who led the guns to getting into the community.
And your argument is because it impacts black and brown communities. Your argument is that's why registration doesn't occur.
Yes, that's my argument.
That's something I've got to think about. My sense is that a lot of people that are opposed to gun control or gun safety legislation are going to be opposed no matter who it affects. But at least that's the argument that they're going to make, I think, to a large extent. I think it's going to go beyond that, but that's something I'm willing to think about.
Appreciate it. Razor, you had a question, comment?
Yeah, how you doing, Mr. Deeds?
I'm Creigh Razor.
He already said that. And man, like he said he likes your food truck, man. So get it right.
Got you. Okay, I need to ask you a question. Actually, I got two questions. One, who is more instrumental in talking to you, the lobbyists or the community, when it comes to the laws that you push forward?
The community. You know, in a perfect world, you've got good lobbyists on both sides of the issue, but we don't live in a perfect world. I'm going to listen more to the people I represent. I always have. I mean, in terms of a particular issue, that's what it's always going to boil down to.
And the second question is, in our community, we have a strong distrust of any politician who shows up when it's time to be elected, but then tells us, after they get elected, if you have any issue, then you come find me, when they didn't say that when it came time to look for votes. How do you plan on combating our community that feels this way?
You know, I'll always be here. I will always be in the community I represent. That's the way I've always worked. I mean, I think that, you know, the last time I was at your food truck was last year at a public event. I wasn't running for office. I wasn't out there on the ballot last year, but I think when you were in public office, you are essentially always running for office. You can't take a thing for granted. You can't take a person for granted. You've got to always be available and accessible. And politicians that are at risk, it seems to be, of not being a successful politician.
Thank you.
So I see that one of your other priorities is education, and absolutely agree that everyone is entitled to, as you call it, a world-class public education. My question, though, is schools schools need much more help or resources in terms of servicing the kids that extends beyond education. You know, you can just look to what's happening in some of our local schools and hear the need there. And so I'm wondering how you feel that you may be able to be a resource for the schools in terms of additional areas that they may need assistance in.
In the communities I've represented, I've always been in touch with school divisions and tried to get in the classroom and to try to put a human face on government. I've always tried to encourage kids, even at early ages, to learn as much as possible about the way the process works. I think that's the way you develop trust. But the bottom line is, we have never really stepped up as a society to invest in education the way we talk. If children really are our top priority, if children are our future, and we all know that they are, we have to invest in public education. We have to put our money behind what we speak, what we say. You know, for example, since 1981, when Chuck Robb was elected governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, we've set as a goal paying teachers at the national average. You know, if we're the 10th wealthiest state in the country, why should we aim for the national average? We should aim for the 10th highest teacher pay in the country. We should invest, if those kids really are our future, we've got to invest in them like that. Our budget should reflect our priorities. So in my view, we have to invest, you know, in the child all the way around. We in the budget we passed in the Senate this year, we take teacher pay, for example, above the national average for the first time. That's not enough. But we also, in 2008 or 2009, when we were in recession, we put a cap on the amount of money the state will provide to school divisions for support personnel. The support personnel, the people who work in cafeterias and drive buses and and do the janitorial work in the school are as important as a teacher in many respects. So we've removed that cap in this year's budget, if we can ever get a budget passed.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make though is that you can make sure that you provide that excellent access to education. However, if you got a kid that has so many barriers that they can't even get to the point to really take advantage of it when they're in the classroom, that's, I think, where our schools need a lot of help in.
Yeah, what we need is universal pre-K education.
Agreed.
So we can get kids impact earlier. We need to have free breakfast and lunch all the time, because kids that are hungry don't learn. We've got to be able to do whatever we can to help that child live the best life that they can.
What are your thoughts about supporting programming in schools, DEI programming in schools?
I think that we have to recognize that in the past we've made a lot of mistakes as a society. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've not been as inclusive as we could be, and some of the policies that have been adopted over the long haul have basically created additional hindrances and burdens that have not allowed all of us to fully participate in our economy. And for that reason, we have to invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Do you feel like that when people have the CRT, DEI discussions, and really I lumped that, for the sake of this conversation, I lumped that with the gender equity and reproductive rights. I say that because, like, if you look at the Trump followers and how the Republican Party, in my opinion, has been hijacked, right? There seems to be like this level of white supremacy that are trying to keep brown people in their place, and they're trying to keep women in their place. Like, how do you intend to fight that? Because it seems to be on the rise.
Well, right now, the politics of our governor and the politics of Trump are to appeal to this disgruntled white base that is fearful of things like CRT. They don't understand what it means. Most people don't understand. It's basically an academic,
right?
That academic field that's taught in college. It's not something that was ever taught in public schools. But they fear the wokeness, whatever that means. So I think all you can do is to combat it with the truth. All you can do is just talk about ways to advance everybody. You can't work for one segment of the population. Right. You've got to lift everybody up. A rising tide lifts all boats. You've got to worry about lifting all boats. Give them an opportunity.
Now hold on a second, Creigh.
Okay.
Hold on a second, Creigh.
Okay.
Hold on. All right, now you my man. This all sound good, right? And we got a campaign coming up, but it's no denying that the money doesn't really come out of my community. We don't even fund the Negro College Fund or the what were we talking about last year? HBCU, yeah, right. So I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about how everybody gotta, we gotta come across the board and everybody gotta work together. But in your position, there are times in order to get things done, you have to give a little to take a little. Now, when it comes to that, how do you plan on explaining to the Black and brown community that I had to allow this so I could give you that? Or is that a conversation that you're uncomfortable having?
It's not a conversation I'm uncomfortable with having. You have to tell people the truth about things. That's the bottom line. You have to tell people the truth. But I'll tell you an example. Virginia right now in its budget spends more on per student at Norfolk State, higher average Norfolk State and Virginia State than we do at other schools. And that hadn't happened. That's just a recent thing. But over the years, we've tried to make right, because for a lot of years we did a lot of things wrong. I'm the chair of the Capital Outlay Subcommittee of Senate Finance that decides what gets built on college campuses. And I made a special trip to both Norfolk State and to Virginia State this past December. I carried a budget amendment this past year for Virginia State to make sure that the right thing happens in terms of capital outlay on that campus, so I could become familiar with the needs of those schools. And I'm really proud of the outcome of both of those schools, of what they're able to accomplish there.
Gotcha. So thank you for all that. And let's maybe end this on the healthcare and mental health. Can we go to that, Max?
Yeah,
that cool?
sure. Yep.
Is it all right? Did you have something before that?
Nope, that's the direction I was
All right,
headed
cool.
in.
Yeah,
and it
we'll
looks
close it
like
with
you
that.
have a personal connection with that, and I just maybe have you elaborate on where we're getting it wrong, how you're helping us to get it right.
Well, I've been, I've been focused on healthcare for a long time, and I'm real proud of the fact that in 2019, one of the things we got done was to expand Medicaid. We expanded Medicaid, made health insurance accessible to something like 450,000 people. We've got real problems coming up with the end of the medical emergency. During the medical emergency of the pandemic, another 250,000 people probably qualified for Medicaid expansion. Because during the medical emergency, we weren't required to do the periodic checks to make sure people still qualified. Between now and next April, maybe as many as 350,000 people will fall off the rolls. So we've got a lot of work to do to make sure those people still have access to health insurance. I've been focused on mental health for a bunch of years to make our system more equitable, make our system work better for people all over the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we have a very disjointed system of mental health care. I've been focused most recently on building community capacity, on making sure we can fill the 28% vacancy rate at our CSPs that exist statewide, 28% employee vacancy rate, to make sure we can raise Medicaid reimbursement for behavioral health services, to make sure we can build a pipeline of people that will provide those services statewide, to make sure that we put more money into long-term supportive housing, because the data shows that people with serious mental illness can live their best life if you provide them a place to live and you can provide them some support. So we've got so much more to do. We've got to right size our system. I'm in the middle of so much work with respect to behavioral health and mental health right now that we could spend another half hour talking about that.
Right, but healthcare, which I'm encompassing mental health within that, and again, like you and I have had the conversation of like I'm a part of that field as well. And one thing that I see from the inside is that too many times it's too business-like. Like it gets too many institutions get focused on the bottom line and get focused on budgets. It's not about the people, Creigh. And I feel like so much would be solved if it was a people first approach of saying, how do we meet people at their needs? And meeting them at their needs means access and affordability, right? I mean, there's so many people who wait like a year plus to be able to see a doctor, or they get in worse health because they can't afford the care. Like, I mean, like, when are we going to get serious about it?
Now, at the beginning, you said too many institutions are focused on the bottom line. You mean all institutions are focused on the bottom line. And that's a very serious issue. I was having a conversation at the door of somebody the other day when I was knocking on doors just outside of Charlottesville. Somebody was talking about a Medicare for all. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but we need to figure out a way we can have universal health care. Everybody has access because everybody needs access. Everybody, this is an issue that affects every single one of us. And there are too many people that are falling through the cracks. Medicaid expansion was important because we were able to expand healthcare to a bunch of people, but you got to remain eligible for Medicaid expansion, and there are too many people that fall through the cracks, and it's something that keeps me up at night.
Gotcha. Creigh, well, thank you for your time today, and, and please don't make this the last time.
I'm always here. I'm available anytime.
Thank you, and I'll we'll give you the last word if there was one word you want to leave with our listeners.
The one word is we've got a Democratic primary right now. The primary is the 20th of June. There's early voting until the 17th of June. So I would just humbly ask for your consideration and vote in this primary. If I'm returned to office, I'll focus on K through 12 education, making sure we have opportunities everywhere. I'll focus on building a mental health care system and a healthcare system that works for all of us. I'll focus on making sure that higher education and job training is accessible to people. We've got so much to do.
Yes. Appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
I am Made Show Talk Show, y'all. Stay tuned. As promised, we're going to be joined once again with the good folks from Counseling Alliances of Virginia to wrap up some of the mental health awareness talk for this show. Tell a friend. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor. I am Made Show Talk Show, y'all.
Thank you.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
Look at that. Streaming people. Y'all can hear me now. Trey and Gene, right? Razor. All right, good stuff. My bad, streaming people. Y'all didn't hear the little intro I did. but the radio land heard me. So so we are back for the little Ask Max. And I know this is gonna tie into quite a bit. We wanted to make sure that you guys joined us for this mental health awareness. Max also had a couple, another comment and question for you guys when it comes to directly our youth and what more we could do for them, with the services that you all provide. So Miss Max gave me the free reign to go ahead and do this thing. So Max, here's how I want to.
Mine, y'all.
It's still yours.
Charles, permission.
All right. Okay, I got it. It is yours. Like, I'm just posing the question, then I'm gonna get out the way.
Okay.
But the Ask Max, when we talk about mental health, I can't. Like, I was trying to think, Gene, Trey, Razor, Max. How can I tastefully bring up the discussion of our brother John Morant? I was thinking, because I don't want to be one of these talking heads that's like trying to get likes and views and follows about this young man's pain, because the brother's going through something, obviously. And to me, Gene and
Why
Trey,
you say that?
That's what I'm getting at, brother. Because to me, it feeds into why we have you all here today, the mental health awareness. And Razor, to like my thing is, and first let me state the Ask Max. And I'm not, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. This Ask Max is coming from me, Max. Even though I had this conversation with others, and I feel for the brother so much, I don't even know what the question is exactly. Gene, you may have to help me or Trey frame the question. But it's like, what can we do for our brother and brothers like Ja Morant? What can we do for our brothers like Ja Morant? Because we don't know him personally. We probably never will meet him or talk to him. But our brothers like, because I see so many of our young brothers look just like him. Razor, to the point to where you got the world at your disposal. You got God-given talent that can be generational shifted. But to fit in, to look cool, whatever the reason may be, you're willing to throw it away. Like you're willing to risk it all. Because society tells you, like, this is how you're supposed to look. This is what you're supposed to do. That's what I see. Without knowing the brother's personal story and day by day run-in, so I'm not going to judge them on that regard. But what we do know is what we see public. And so, Max, Gene, Trey, Razor, Gene and Trey, y'all the professionals here. But I'm just saying, I'm approaching this from another young brother that thinks he has to show out and show off.
So
to show what he got. Like, how can we help them?
I'm just going to quickly answer a question with a question. How old is Ja first?
I mean, he's early 20s.
Yeah.
I can't nail it exactly, but he's early 20s, mid 20s.
So, are we really dealing with a mental health issue, or is this a young kid doing something stupid?
But that's still my point, though. Like the way that we think, the way our young men think, right? So even if you don't call it mental health, it's still the way our young black men think.
Yeah.
Right.
That's our culture. That's our culture. This is the problem I have with it. Okay. Where I'm from, white guys had two pistols, 2 shotguns, 2 rifles in the back of their window driving up to school, driving down there. Mm-hmm. And, they would have a dead animal on the back of their truck, gutted it, blood running down the side of it. And sitting there. No, let's take away the Confederate flag because I don't want to divert.
Okay,
they literally would have a dead animal, blood running down the side of their truck, on their boots, on their person, and a knife on their side, and it's fine. I grew up in NWA, the drug era, guns, the juke house, all that is part of our culture, right? And just because we have money, just because we got money, all of a sudden things are taken away from us because of the viewpoint of people. That I don't understand it.
Yeah. So Razor, so before Gene and Trey chime in with their professional opinion, I agree with you. And don't get me wrong, I understand and I even sympathize with him on the point of being so young, being thrown into the limelight, and people acting like that it's not his right to carry a gun. Like he lives in Memphis, Tennessee, and like they're a right to carry state. So he's not doing anything illegal. Like let's be totally clear about that, because I've heard people come to his defense saying the brother ain't doing nothing illegal, leave him alone, right? But Razor, here's my point though. Like that's not even the point on whether like white people carry guns in their trucks and all that. My point is, you are a part of an association. You are a part of an establishment, whether you like it or not, Razor. They're going to give you millions of dollars, and they want to make you the face of their league if you carry yourself this certain way. What I'm saying is, if it's your lifelong dream to be this professional NBA player, why is flashing a gun on social media worth it? That's all I'm saying.
My question to you is, why do we have to be bought?
Well, here's my thought about the whole thing is in terms of Ja, for me, it's about just poor decision making. I take more issue with society's, the public's response to his actions. And then there's also something to be said about these professional leagues giving these young kids all this money to play for service, for them to play sports, and not taking care of them fully in the sense of being in a mental space to be able to handle the fame, the money, and whatever else comes along with it. I think that you got an agent or you got somebody to care for you, or someone should be making sure that you are set up for success when you are placed in this particular scenario. So.
All I hear y'all saying is shut up and dribble.
No, brother. No, I'm not saying that at all. Like what I'm talking about is, and I want Gene and Trey to, and I totally get where you're coming from, Razor, but I'm not saying. I'm saying, to me, there's there's a messed up way of thinking to where he feels like he has to show off and show out like he's a thug. When you a millionaire, you don't gotta portray like this street image, bro. Like you're messing up your money. Like to be fact, Razor, like, and I don't see nothing wrong with it. You messed up. It's no different than you being a businessman, Razor, but you gotta cater to your constituents, and that's not selling out. That's you being professional. He's not looking professional right now.
But why do you have to be a thug because you have a gun and rap music is playing in the background? Why does that have to be a thug?
He's portraying an image though that's not conducive with his profession, is what I'm saying. Now he can just say, I don't want your endorsements, I don't want your millions of dollars, because I don't want to have to portray any kind of professional images that the brand gives. Like LeBron speaks out on social issues all the time. LeBron is not considered a sellout. LeBron puts his money where his mouth is, but he knows he carries himself in a professional and dignified and representable way. Whereas
that's his choice.
Right, it is his choice. But Razor, what I'm saying is, I feel like Ja's a reflection of so many of our young men that feel like that they got. And let's take thug. Maybe thug was a bad term to use. I don't want to sound like that. But the imagery of this is cool. Like I'm a millionaire, but I still got to act like flashing guns and that's not forget in the strip club, like causing a ruckus, like causing a scramble where people could have got hurt. Like I'm supposed to act like that's cool because I'm a young black man with money. I feel like that's the problem.
But y'all, it is cool. Like all of us when our parents weren't home, grabbed guns.
Help us, please.
Yeah, it is cool. All of us grabbed guns when our parents weren't home, and doesn't mean that we were trying to shoot nobody or nothing. But the first time that you learn how to cock a gun, a chamber a gun, it does feel cool. So just because he has money does not mean that we have to put him in a certain category.
But is that the image that we want the other young black men to emulate? Because like
it's the image we emulated. So I don't see your point.
Can I get in?
And I think it would be
please,
just for real quick, Gene, I think
Let me hear
we
Max.
would be responding differently if we were personally in that scenario. I don't know that Razor would be saying that if it one of his kids who was out here.
She right, Razor. She right.
If it was one of my kids, it's because it's in their blood.
Help us, Gene. Come on.
You don't get a name like Razor because you sell Girl Scout cookies.
Razor, Razor, I appreciate your perspective, man, but I gotta be honest with you, man. When it comes to this, I think we forget our historical history and how, if you look at the NBA, right, and you go back to Jalen Rose and you go back to Allen Iverson, you go back to Michael Jordan, you go back to how we've transcended the images and the stereotypes of us, of black people, right? And we cannot forget that historical perspective and how it's linked. If it's white, it's right. If it's white, it's right? And what is professionalism? What is professional? How do we carry what is professional? But I really believe what is right and what is wrong, right? And I believe my brother's wrong in some ways. And I also think he suffered from a syndrome called Dr. Marlene Watson, the black shadow. We all walk with the black shadow, a black inferiority complex, not only from the media who guides us that way, the cool pose or how to be black and want to be black, and how they support us in negative ways in order to tear down our culture, our people, right? So I think John is struggling somewhat psychologically homeless. All right, my brother's got all this money, right? And he has to hold on to his hood or to his lifestyle. And then if he chooses to be right, not white, then is he selling out? Is he not being true to himself, like you being true to yourself? Or you just being a healthy person that isn't living with that black inferiority complex? And I don't think we talk about that enough, because I believe it is a mental health issue or a struggle for a lot of our men going in. We really believe. I said it, sometimes I was talking with one of my clients and it was like the NFL, the NBA can be seen as a plantation. And how do we carry ourselves on this plantation? Like you said, are we being bought? Yeah. In some ways, if we don't act right, we don't act white, then there's consequences. right?
Yeah, Gene, I'm totally with you.
Go ahead.
But I also come from the school of you play the game until you change the game, right?
Yes.
And the only point I'm making, like I said, didn't do anything illegal. I understand like that it is even generational as far as culturally. That like that, yeah, everything got to be on live, right? Even though I disagree with it personally, I get that that's where we are. My only point is when we talk about mental health and our way of thinking, I'm saying what would make our young people think that that's worth it? Like he's not a sellout to me. He controls his destiny.
I don't know.
Just don't flash guns on live,
Is
bro.
he
That's all we
looking at it,
ask.
like, in terms of the consequences?
He's not.
What this
That's
may
why it's a
cause.
mental problem.
Right. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. He did it twice, man. Within 3 months.
I think, Charles, what you said earlier is we don't know this young man's history. We don't know his mother. We don't know his father. We don't know what has impacted him.
His father be fighting. His father be fighting Shannon Sharp at NBA games. That's what.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
That's who that was. So we are, and LeBron had a difficult history as well, but chose to navigate it differently. All I'm saying is that I believe that there's a mental issue that is impacting that young man. I'm not saying he's schizophrenic. I'm not saying he's antisocial personality disorder. But does he have trauma? Probably so.
So wait a minute, y'all. Hold on.
Come on, break it.
Y'all telling me that because this man got a mom and dad in the house and refused to let certain people do and say what they want to him, he got trauma. But LeBron doesn't even know who his daddy was his whole entire life and moved from house to house and pretty much let people do and say what they want. And his combative way is to put his money out there to build schools and stuff, but never really stand up for himself. That's also what is considered right?
No, I think they all suffer from trauma. And
Yeah,
everyone deals with
But
trauma.
it's almost like y'all stereotype. You know, I love you to death, but it sounds like because we black, we trauma.
No, bro, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say, we have been living in a system of structural racism that impacts all of us psychologically.
I agree.
All of us psychologically. And how we act out. So you're right. LeBron puts his energy towards school, savings, his kids. And John's young. He's trying to figure it out. And who's his mentor? Who's walking him through this? Yeah. I just got blessed to meet one of Dr. Lisa Martin. She is she's a psychotherapist for the NBA. And I would love to reach out to her to get her perspective, how she sees. I just hung up with her yesterday. And I'll reach out and say, Lisa, what's your thoughts on this situation?
And I want to get Trey's
that kind of money.
Like as a young black man responding, but Razor, I want to be totally clear.
Let me say one last thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say I want to be clear with you too. Like I'm not.
When you got that kind of money, you have to make sure that you're not a target and a victim. And just because God gave me talent does not mean I need to sit over here and be somebody's mark because I have money. I don't agree with that.
Okay. Trey, you got the last minute.
Yeah, I've been sitting here because part of me feels like I don't have the words to say what I want to say or what I feel like I feel. But I'm 28. So I guess some people still consider me young. But I remember growing up, I was one of those kids. I grew up in Chesterfield County, outside of Richmond. I went to a predominantly white high school. I grew up in white suburbs. I didn't have a lot of experiences that a lot of black kids had growing up, and I got made fun of for that. But I also remember being held to a standard that felt unbearable at times. Like I always had to be on the top of my game. I couldn't really make a mistake. And then when I finally did make a mistake, it tore me up. So when we're talking about this young man, and I hear he says 21, like I think about when I was 21, how I had to reconcile with people are telling me I'm grown, I'm an adult, and I never still felt like I was grown or an adult, but I was still growing and developing, but I still had the pressure of I have to be an adult. I can't make mistakes. And when I do make mistakes, not only is it a mistake on my own character, but people are going to be looking at me talking about my community because of my own individual mistakes. And I think that's a pressure. I think that's a pressure that can get to any young person, but especially a young Black male individual who doesn't want to have to carry the whole world on their shoulders. So when like I said, I'm talking from my own perspective. I don't know this person. I don't know his experience. I don't know his history, but I as in my own personal experience, I do remember and I do feel like sometimes I wish I didn't have to carry that, and I know that I do.
Yeah, welcome to being a Black man, right, man? Appreciate you sharing that. We all have to code switch, and we don't like it.
Yeah, that was good.
For sure. But yeah, but thank y'all. Hey, this is another conversation we got to continue. But I'm gonna kick it over to Miss Max to close this. Ask Max, since she reminded me that it's hers.
No, I don't have much to say. It was good conversation. I think that what some of us may have been kind of struggling to get past is the fact that we were slapping a label on it of a mental health issue. Because there's a cause and an effect, and so something caused the actions or responses that Mr. Morant is displaying. And I guess when you do peel back all the layers, it's a mental health issue as a broad statement. So so that's it. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Trey, for your comments. We ready to move on? Or
we're gonna go ahead and break for this hour and come back. Remember, Gene and Trey, thank y'all, man. Gene, it's been too long. We got to have you back sooner.
Yes, sir. I'd be happy to be back. Appreciate all of you, Max, Razor, Matt, and Charles. We appreciate you, man.
Always, baby.
The continued blessings. Let us know how we can help.
All right. Hey, I did send you guys in your email the Healing Racial Trauma and Understanding Tangible and Intangible Loss. It's a great read. It's real simple. Please share.
Okay. Yes, indeed. And any events, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Do y'all have any in particular events coming up, or we share that and you take it from there?
Pretty much, we believe mental health every month, right? That's right. We're gonna do it. So we have the Racial Awareness Sensitivity Group, 6:15 and 7:45, the first and third Tuesdays of the month, and then we have the Breathing Room for our people, for Black people, not Black and brown, just Black people. We have a space to talk about their traumas, their struggles dealing with racial trauma. And that's Wednesdays, the first and third Wednesdays. And it's on Zoom. You can go to our website, www.cavahelps.com. The first and third Wednesdays from 9 to 10:30. So please join us and keep looking out for our stuff as we continue to push this issue in our healing racial trauma.
All right, thank you, Gene. Keep up the great work.
Gene, I would love to have you back real soon. I want to dig down into how we help our youth.
Oh, I'm with you. Just let me know. I'll be happy to join you. Definitely.
All right, guys, take care. I am HO Family. Stay tuned. Back with the last hour of the show.
Mic check 1 2. You know
how we do. Missed that conversation, but maybe you can come out soon.
Oh yeah. Hey, Miss Mary. Yep. So we're on a break right now. Just so you know, this stream is live, so people can hear and see us. But we're not on air yet, but the stream is live. So we're just gonna finish the song. We'll be on in just a few minutes, 3-4 minutes. All right. Thank you.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning into In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor, here for the bottom of the show, top of the last hour. Thank y'all for staying tuned. Make sure you tell a friend. There's still much more good info. Keep it up. And I'm just so delighted. Make me want to do a praise dance. We got Miss Max up in the booth. Miss Max in the building, Razor.
It's good to be here. You do not know how long it's been, because when I do the show remotely, I can't hear the theme song. I don't hear the IMHO theme song. So it has been over a year since I have actually heard that, and it was good to be in this space and just kind of rejuvenated by hearing all that.
It's a good look too.
Got me amped for the show.
Yeah, thank you, Razor. We're gonna keep getting bigger and better. Y'all know Cville Inclusive Media. Y'all go ahead and check out their website as well while you edit. Shouts out to Charlottesville Tomorrow, Vinegar Hill Magazine. And I think that is a perfect segue into our next and final guest. Last but definitely not least, none other than Miss Mary Grace. Mary, thank you for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
Oh, I'm grateful to be here, Charles. It's wonderful to meet all of you others. In my humble opinion, this is a great show, and y'all do such good presentations, analysis, and the music. Everything's great. I'm just so impressed.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. We definitely do. And before we get into the crux of why you're here today, I want to remind the listeners, for those who may think that you may be a new voice, a new face, it's been a few years, but you actually, and you can correct me if I get the terminology wrong, but you were a medic, you were a first aid responder, and we had you on talking about your experiences, back when our city was in the early stages of its healing process from August 12th. In 2017. So I definitely want to do a good wellness check on you once again. Like, how have you been following that, as far as leading into your work today? Like, how did that shape your work of today, being in Charlottesville on August 12th?
I think it was the 14th. Yes, it was a ridiculously unstructured day by the police and responders and stuff like that. I was appalled at how little training had gone into any kind of nonviolent conflict responses. It was awful. I had been trained as an EMT with Madison County Rescue Squad, so I used some of my. I was no longer certified. I'm no longer certified as an EMT, but I still have the skills. So I ended up. Yes, it was a surreal day, Charles. It was just a very strange day because I ended up helping some Klan and Nazi members who had been injured. And they were there in front of me, and I just ended up helping them. And it was, I'm a Christian, and the passage that says, "Love your enemies." I just have never so literally loved my enemies, and it was fascinating and hard. I think, in terms of how it's shaped who I am, I think it puts in perspective. Like, I had a lot of individual conversations with some of these white nationalists who were there. Who just seemed like such little boys, such broken men with terribly traumatic histories. And I've done some research since about child trauma. I focus on child trauma. That's my major interest, adverse childhood experiences, including racism as an adverse childhood experience. So to see how these men have been traumatized, and then how the narrative allows them to then blame people and take no responsibility for their own actions. It's crucial and important.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And Mary, that is how God works, because Max had a question that she didn't get to with our last guests, who are mental health workers, and for you to be sort of in the same realm, because her question is in regarding like our youth and our children, and helping them. I don't know what her exact question is, but I'm banking on she may can ask you that question. But before we get to that, want to go ahead and introduce why we have you here today. So you are a board member of the Upper Nile Orphans Care Organization, based out of South Sudan. And so go ahead and give sort of the stump speech to let our listeners know, what that work is about and why it's important to you.
Sure. So I volunteered as an English teacher in South Sudan in 2013 and 2015. And while I was there, I got involved in going to visit at the Doctors Without Borders Hospital and met both the director of the hospital, and I worked with a little amputee orphan guy, Khan, who's now 15. He was 5. And when I came back, the director of that hospital, he ended up starting this NGO in South Sudan, Upper Nile Orphans Care Organization. And when he told me about it, I just said, oh, I want to help. So what we do, we started a 501c3 here in the United States. Some wonderful, skilled people helped start this 501c3. So it's a nonprofit educational charity, and we raise awareness and funds for that school effort to start, but we want to broaden it out so that it's more far-ranging than just that one war orphan residential school.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned NGO. That's non-government organization, right?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. For those that may not be aware. So, first question that I have for you in regards to that is, like, why South Sudan, right? Like, what was the connection, or what was the importance that drew you there and made you become part of this work?
Oh my goodness. So even when I was a little kid, I just always was taken. I had some really foundational experiences here in the United States as a little kid in terms of racism. Like, I remember when we got our first TV, and one of the first things I saw on the TV was Bull Connor's dogs attacking children in the Children's March in Birmingham. And I just started screaming, and I don't remember what my mom said, but it was something that helped me understand that it wasn't my fault, but I was responsible. And so my life has just unfolded in this way that I attend to and just try to observe what goes on racially in our community and in ourselves. So when I heard that my home church up in Northern Virginia, I'm a member of Charles Church too, but up in Northern Virginia, a group of them were supporting a school effort in South Sudan. And because I had been teaching English for about 17 years to immigrant adults here, I just reached out and asked if they needed an English teacher for a summer. And I ended up going, just loving it. Of course, I learned far more than I taught. And so ended up being able to go back again and then help start this school.
Right. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask maybe one of the tougher questions. I know Razor probably think he coming up with a tough one, but this is real. And, Mary, like, definitely break down the makeup of this group, because one thing that I'm sure that's crossing people's mind, because this comes up when you talk about organizations that do such mission work, right, is sort of the great white savior complex.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, break that down when it comes to your work and how you personally respond to that, within doing this work.
That's a huge concern and consideration. The organization is predominantly Black and African American. And I, because I had gone there with a skill, so South Sudan became an independent country in 2012. And I went in 2013 because they had chosen English as their official language. National languages are all the tribal languages, about 64 or so different tribal languages. And so I had a skill that I could share for a specific time. And so I went. And that, I do a lot of work here in the States too, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, the fact that I'm white is a reality, but I think it's an interesting perception how we racialize people and individuals and systems, and the racism that is prevalent and predominant in our society is also a factor around the world because of colonialism and the legacy of and capitalism and the exploitation and extraction resources. I mean, it's something that I try to fight with on a systemic multi-levels to oppose extraction resources and those kinds of things, which make for the need for other people to maybe learn English. It's all of a piece. And yet the more tools that people have wherever they are, the more likely they can then create their own space, their own ways of being, without any reliance then on the great white savior. Those I am very cognizant of that. I actually asked other people to be the president of this organization so that it wouldn't be a white person at the head. But I just seem to have at the time, I just seem to have the passion and the time to devote to trying to get this going. And I saw the need as desperate enough that I was willing to step in to fill that need. But other people in the group are now doing amazing things, like your dad, Reverend Frank D. Lewis, is the vice president of UOCO, and my wonderful minister. So, and he's doing incredible work reaching out to the community in Central Virginia to raise funds and awareness about these kids.
Did you go into this this opportunity with any expectations? And then what was the reality of that once you actually got immersed into the programming there?
That's a great question. I think one of my main expectations was that I was going to teach English. and I knew that I would learn a lot because I had not been to Africa, and I knew that I would learn a lot, but I didn't realize how much I would learn and how little I would teach. So I think going to some place like that, it's more of a relationship building than a teaching experience. And I mean, I certainly made a difference in terms of like relationships with some of the people I met. And actually this organization sprung out of a relationship. He didn't think he would have been able to, Tito is the man's name. He's a Nuer man from that area, Lair County. He didn't think he would be able to do it without support specifically from the United States. And so my being able to say yes to him allowed these kids to now have a place to call home, a place where there's caring staff, where they get food, which is a real huge issue, and increasingly so right now with the instability in Sudan.
Tell me something you've learned.
Oh, I've learned that I should keep my mouth shut most of the time and that I should follow the lead of like the oldest woman in the Native community and really listen and watch and respect. And it's a humbling experience in that I just know that I don't know almost anything. And our goal as Upper Nile Orphans Care here in the United States, UOCO USA, is to raise awareness, to raise funds, but also to give them what they need to make their school successful for their kids in their culture and the way they, like they're teaching, where is the language the school is taught? They're teaching English, but because that's such a necessity in the society. But they're teaching, almost all the classes are taught in Nuer. They're learning Nuer culture, and it's their school for them, for those kids, and we're simply enabling them to do that.
Yeah, and we have a comment from one of our viewers as well, and like what it leads to is sort of different than what I asked you before about like the whole appearance of being a white savior. But does any part of you feel like the best way to say this? Like, well, one of the terms that's used is white guilt, right? Of sort of, because what the listener question was spinning the block. Is this spinning the block, which means going back to fix something that was messed up? Is there, like, do you feel like that most of it is because you are obviously a humanitarian, but when people use terms like white guilt is driving it, do you think that's a good or a bad thing, or either?
So I think this is a really profoundly important conversation, and a lot of a lot of white people work out of guilt. And it goes back for me to that conversation with my mom when I saw Bull Connor's dogs attacking kids. And to reiterate, she said that it somehow helped me understand that it was not my fault, but that I was responsible. And I think that's a really fascinating balance. And I don't think most white people have heard that kind of analysis or clear boundary. And so I don't really know how to deal with that. I probably do feel some guilt, but not in the way that I'm doing it because of guilt. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. And it's a work that I am gratefully uniquely qualified for in this particular venue. And so I'm just trying to do what I can to make that work happen because I see a value in it.
Thank you. And Razor, I think you had a comment or question.
Yeah, first I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. But I also, it was two things that you and Charles said that kind of spawned this question. One, I like what you said about you were tested because you had to help your enemy, with the Nazis and everything, right? And then when Charles started talking about just spinning back, it led to this question. The majority of in my humble opinion, the majority of the things that white America tries to fix in Black and brown communities are things that white America has implemented or in control of. So why wouldn't we take all the time and effort that we go to build the schools and put rice in bowls and water and build these things and lobby right at the people who are doing the stuff? So let's say, for instance, for what your mom taught you, instead of marching and intervening and keeping people from being bit by dogs, why wouldn't we just show up at Bull Connor's house?
Yes.
Because it's a lot easier for them to kill Black and brown people than it is to kill somebody that looks like their sister and their mother. And I personally believe that's what really helped the civil rights. I know a lot of Black people not going to like that, but I think when it came down to them having to hurt somebody that looked like their daughter or their mom or their sister, that made them at least hold up a little bit. So I'm just wondering why when we go do these works in other places, we don't just go right to the people. So if it's been colonized by England, we go straight to England and then get at their front doorsteps instead of going out there and it's not putting a Band-Aid on the problem, but it's also just kind of trying to make it palatable, in my opinion, for something that we're not going to where the actual faucet is.
Those are great metaphors and analogies, and you're absolutely correct. It has to be a multi-pronged, systemic, as well as individualized approach. So Charles knows some of my history. I've been an activist since I was a young woman, and I've lived in multiracial communities and in immigrant communities. I mean, intentionally in the same houses and stuff. And I just had a family of refugees move out from my home, and it's. So I think, yeah, and I am part of, I rage against the machine. I go to demonstrations. I've been arrested numerous times for nonviolent civil disobedience, and that's again a white privilege, in that if I were a Black man, I mean, I've been arrested with all different kinds of people, and the Black men tend to be really heavily targeted for violence by the police when they risk these kinds of situations. Not to mention, then it goes in the box when they're trying to apply for work. And I can, as this little white woman, I can say, oh, I've been arrested multiple times for nonviolent civil disobedience. And usually they just say, oh, okay. But if I were a Black man, they would not say that. They would say, thanks anyways, go someplace else. And so I see my privilege, my race privilege, and I'm privileged by the mere fact of my pigmentation, my lack of pigmentation, that it puts then a responsibility on me to do whatever I can to address systemic racism and other kinds of violences in our society. And it's myriad. I mean, there's just so much to address. And I mean, I lobby, I show up at we were just at the governor's mansion in North Carolina the other day. Yeah, all of it's wrong. And so as I do this effort for some kids, really rooted in my relationship with other kids whom I met while I was there, and seeing kids with their eyes packed with flies, and just teaching those kids, okay, let's all go to the well, and we all go to the well and they wash their faces, and then the flies aren't landing on them anymore. And just those kinds of relationship building things that I was privileged to do helped me build a relationship in a way that I really wanted to then make a difference in the work that they want to do for their own community. It's not
Right.
me doing it. I don't tell them what to do in the school. I don't choose what the curricula is. That's not my right, my place. They are doing their own wonderful, amazing thing in that school. And it's only, they just have one big hut with 27 children and staff and supplies and food. It's all in one little tiny compound.
Yeah.
So,
and Mary, that's what I wanted you to get to next too, is, because we have you here on the radio, right? So, like, wow, it's a good conversation. And like definitely getting to the crux, of a mission such as this, in particular this. But like, what's the ask directly? Because I don't think we really got to the core of that. Like right now, like what's at stake and like what's needed to continue this work.
So, yes, we are. So we have this one little school. It's called Hand of Hope Community School. We hope, or they hope, their hope is to eventually grow larger and be able to start more schools and do women's education, because the illiteracy rate in South Sudan for rural women is 98%. And of course, women who can't read or illiterate in their own languages, they're not able to then teach their children, and the cycle of especially stuff against girls continues. And so anyway, we have a lot of goals as an organization for them to expand and do more schools and women's education and all kinds of literacy programs in the community. And to do that, but to do just our basic school that we have right now, which is in one small county in northern South Sudan, our baseline goal is $4,700 per quarter to raise, and almost all of that funding is coming from us. But a couple NGOs have gotten involved, non-governmental organizations there have gotten involved to help. One NGO built a set of latrines for the school. Another built the fence around the compound, which is really helpful and important in an area where there are dangerous animals and dangerous people. But our goal in terms of our funding, all we're doing right now is food and staffing. That's almost 100% of our funding now, and none of our staff here in the United States, none of us get any funds at all. We don't get any kind of income or anything, not even expenses. So our goal is to make that school happen and then grow it. What's impacting that is that there's 30 or more years of war in that region. Sudan Sudan and South Sudan had a civil war to separate, and that separation for independence happened in 2012. But then very soon after that, when I was there, actually, the first time, there was a schism in the government, and the president and vice president ended up dividing there from different tribes. And it's really the legacy again of corruption and colonialism that created these manufactured differences, which then created a new civil war in South Sudan. And that civil war somewhat subsided, but then in Eritrea and in Ethiopia and in Tigray, the Tigray region of Ethiopia, there's so much trauma going on up there that people are flooding into Sudan. And now there's a war in Sudan. And so people are flooding south. All these refugees that are coming from the east, from Tigray, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, they're flooding in west into Sudan. And because of the war in Sudan, now they're flooding back. And many of them are South Sudanese who fled north because of the civil war in South Sudan. People are flooding south, and that is creating a huge destabilization in the communities, but also according to Oxfam, half of the people in South Sudan are now food insecure and in danger of starvation. And so the food routes to get food to the school, our kids are safe now. Tito, the director, believes that the kids are safe right now. But accessing food and getting food in there is hugely problematic and likely to get much worse before we can fix it.
Thank you. That's good info.
I had a question. It's one of those Max questions. And I imagine it's going to rub some people the wrong way, but I'm making apologies for it. So again, thank you for joining us and listening to your story about your mission and what you are trying to accomplish there, you and your team are trying to accomplish there in Sudan. So I personally think that, you know, a lot of the issues that we as a society deal with in terms of race is because of the differences or lines we draw as far as people groups, right? And so I am wondering what parallels you have been able to see between the individuals that you may have helped on August 12th, and the individuals that you are working with in Sudan. And I asked that question out of pure curiosity only because I think that the only way that we as a society help one another to get on the same page and to be able to get past some of the divisions is to see the similarities between one another. And I think that race has a place, but I am by no means what I feel to be like a social justice advocate. I see human beings and I see what's right and what's wrong, and I see fairness. And I think that, again, the way that we overcome a lot of the issues that we're dealing with in terms of race in this world is to see the similarities. And so I'm just curious, you know, what parallels you have been able to draw between the young man who was on the side of the Nazis, who was laying on who you were helping on the August 12th, who just wanted help from you, and you could tell had issues that started as a little boy, and the person that you're serving in Sudan.
Wow, profound questions. I think one of the parallels that I see, the main parallel I see, is child trauma. Kids who grow up in war have horrific negative outcomes, and kids who grow up in any kind of trauma have exponentially negative outcomes as adults, not just in terms of emotional health, but also in terms of physical health. And so when you look at adverse childhood experiences, that ACEs study from the mid-1990s that was done by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC, that their study showed diabetes, obesity, cancer, lung disease, heart disease. I forget what all else, but all of the typical traumas that we know happen with mental health concerns, but also all these incredible physical outcomes. And those physical outcomes and the mental outcomes for adults destabilize their ability to be parents or to be functional members of society in ways that help lift themselves and their families and their community up. And so I see some of that as a parallel, if that makes sense, that trauma it goes way past it's exponentially difficult for people of color to deal with these things because they don't tend to be lifted as easily or as safely by society. There are incredible discrepancies in who gets help and when they get help and who's dismissed, and so the ability of people to heal and to build resilience is impacted by all kinds of considerations.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for
no
that.
right or wrong
Am I
answer.
answering that?
Yeah,
What's
for me?
Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and Mary, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention as well. You know, there's somebody, you know, hearing and thinking, you know, well, it's like we have a lot of young people that we have to help here and within our community. You know, which is fair, but you know, like I can appreciate that there's plenty of work to go around, right? There's like the labor is plenty, the workers are few, right? Labor is plenty, the laborers are few. So, and I noticed what you said too of you know, it makes me think about our own community on how you're talking about, you know, like North Sudan, South Sudan, and how there's sort of like a migration back and forth. And at some point, some of the issues, you know, like the problem has to be bottlenecked and the issues have to be resolved, or, you know, as migration happens, like some of the same issues are, you know, are going to perpetuate, you know, as time goes on. So, you know, so I personally definitely applaud that, but I was curious on you know, on just your take of that, of like the whole approach, sort of the wholeness of it when we think about, wow, like this sounds like great work, but you know, we as a people need to, and I say the people as like the human race need to understand that when I help my brother or my sister, that inherently is going to help, you know, others, because if they're better off, then they'll function in society better, right? So I kind of wanted your take on that, on the importance of realizing that there's work needed in so many places, and it all makes a difference.
Absolutely. It is all connected. There's an old feminist proverb. It's all connected. Everything is connected. It's like, so when I was planning to go to South Sudan the first time, I had a great experience. I would hang out with neighborhood kids, and we'd hang out on the porch or do craft projects and stuff in my neighborhood. And when I was getting ready to go to South Sudan, I had like hundreds of pencils, and none of them were sharpened. And so I'm like, hey kids, want to sharpen pencils with me? So we sharpened, these neighborhood kids and I sharpened hundreds of pencils. And here's these little kids in my neighborhood doing something for kids across the world. And they loved that they were doing that. And they felt connected to those kids. And when I came back, I said, oh, they love the pencils, because the pencils there sucked. So it was that kind of, I think, like, I do a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just as way of explanation that everything is connected. I do a lot of stuff in my neighborhood. We're building up to something called Street Reach at my local church. I'm a member in a Black Baptist church where I try to not say a lot. And so we're doing this Street Reach thing where we'll have, like, I'm going to do a hula hoop making workshop, and we'll have a lot of free food, and all kinds of kids will come to and play and do all kinds of games and stuff like that, and build community. And I did a garden project with kids. I went around the neighborhood, and in place had a bike, or looked like there might be kids there. I invited the kids to come out during COVID and plant some seedlings and seeds in the garden, in their yard. Those kinds of things build relationships that cross the difficulties that they'll see in their lives. It helps build resilience. So I finally just got a degree, an undergrad degree, and it's an interdisciplinary degree, and you get to call it whatever you want. So I'm calling it trauma, resilience, and belonging. And in that, my goal is to make those connections, is to help people understand that it is in community with one another, past all of the superficials, past all of the labels. It's in community with one another that we build the strength and the accountability, as well as the love, to be able to proceed, to be able to make the world better for one another.
Thank you for that. So, if Max didn't have anything else, I wanted you to make sure the folks know how to reach you, and definitely like how they can get more involved, or if they want to learn more first. You know, like what message would you leave with the folks that may be their first time hearing about this organization?
Oh, thanks. So we are Upper Nile Orphans Care Organization, and it's at UOCO. So UOCO.org. You can find us on the web. And we just finished our bike-a-thon yesterday.
Okay.
Today was the rain date, but they were able to bike. And I'm COVID isolating because I had a big exposure on Wednesday. So I wasn't able to ride, but I'll ride again later this summer. So go to that website, uoco.org. And I'm at War Orphan Care Mary at gmail.com. The War Orphan Care Mary. And please contact us. Go to the website, see what you think. Look at the teams. In terms of diversity, I think I was very intentional on trying to reach out to friends who I just felt had integrity and passion for the same kinds of things. And those are the people who are on my board. So yeah, I'd welcome anybody who wants to do any kind of support work for this or for other kinds of stuff in the community. I'm always interested in hearing what people are doing in their own struggles and their own work.
Awesome.
And donations, we're especially looking for monthly recurring donations so that we can budget for the school more easily and not have to keep doing fundraisers all the time.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being serving other people. For as long as I've known you, you've always been about others, and so I definitely thank you for that, and continued blessings, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And definitely, any word, any communications that we can get out for this area in particular, don't hesitate to let us know.
Thanks, and your daddy will know too.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Charles. I love you. You are awesome. Thank you, everyone. What a beautiful work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Keep on keeping on.
Thank you. We'll do. And I Am HO Family will be back to close. And so y'all stay tuned. In my humble opinion, I Am HO Talk Show. Stay tuned, y'all.
Listen to us on the go at
All right, welcome back, family. Welcome back. All right, making sure my headset's on. Thank you for sticking with us during today's show. End of the show, last few minutes. Any parting comments from anyone? We've had a good show, good conversation.
I think so.
As usual.
Yeah, I'm just grateful and I'm thankful for everybody. Y'all follow up. I mean, you know how we try to do when it comes to edutainment, but UOCO.org. Don't forget about staying informed on your candidates. We had Senator Creigh Deeds with us. God willing, we're going to have a candidate on for you every Sunday leading into the primary, and then we'll see how leading up to the general election works in November. But don't forget, June 20th, Educate. Thank Gene and his team, Counseling Alliances of Virginia, always being unapologetic in their approach of getting to the core things. But that's me. What about you, Ray?
Shoot, I just want everybody to understand how important voting is. Not to get too biblical or anything, but God says obey the laws of the land. Well, we're in a position where we can decide who is making these decisions for us. So we need to exercise that, So,
and I guess if I had to leave a parting thought, it would be to take care of your mental health. Don't view it as mental health as I gotta have some major issue going on in order for it to be a mental health issue. That's something that it has to be managed daily. I don't care if you're talking about small problems or big problems.
That's right.
Seek help when you need it. Be open to that. No stigma what? I need help. I want peace. I want to live a happy life. I want to enjoy my life day to day. And so do what you have to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
And shouts out to Miss Max for being back in studio.
It took me
Absolutely.
It took me a minute to warm up, but it came, and so
it's all good.
Glad to be here.
You did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sounds different, feels different.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep doing what we do. In my humble opinion, is trying to bring you the very best that we can.
That's right.
So we're gonna keep on talking about the tough topics and bringing you the great guests and the conversation. And feel free to dialogue with us.
Please.
Contact us, message us, email us, or what have you.
That's right.
And be engaged in this because we want to. I think we have a good pulse of what we need to talk about. But we are always open to suggestions. So please.
Yeah, and I think, and I like to believe in having you here is another sign, right? It's another turning point because we've had different stages and different successes. Within my humble opinion, again, being, this being our flagship station, being here since the beginning of the station, and the growth that we had for the people, right? Like for being a voice and a mouthpiece for the people. I feel like that today is another sign that what we've been talking about with the Charlottesville Inclusive Media Project, right? And how this collaborative journalism that we're doing is being recognized. And across the world, and shouts out to Sarad, shouts out to Angelique, CT, and Vinegar Hill. To where people are going to see a new IMHO, like they're going to see the growth, they're going to feel the growth, starting from the day, like yet another change for the better. So again, like your presence to me signifies something.
Right.
You hearing me, Deacon Razor? You hearing me?
Absolutely. You sound like your daddy.
We all believe in what we're doing. We're here because we believe in it. Just want to serve the people. Right.
That's right.
Want to serve the people well, and so stay tuned.
Hey, that's a great way to end it. Stay tuned, and not only stay tuned for us, but stay tuned for the OG Creigh Logan coming up with that Soul Lounge next. All right, Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor. Till next time, stay tuned, y'all.
Take care.
Your favorite classics is 101.3 Jams.